All right, welcome everybody back. We are still in week 3, kind of an odd week this week because it's Thanksgiving, so we have another class. We just had class yesterday, but it's day 6 overall. We're continuing our back-end framework setup with Django. What we're going to do today is we're going to start routing URLs and setting up a way to serve static files. And our goal is, if you recall last time, what we did and our stopping point and our goal from last class was to set up this page. So our Django framework is plugged in, and we have this install work successfully page at our root domain, right? If you recall, this is going to be what we consider sort of the home directory. We're going to start building more things. So this is what we're going to do today. Is the goal is to replace this with a custom page of our own that we'll then be able to start playing around with next week when we do our front end development, and we'll have something to do. We'll have some pages that actually work. So I know some folks were hung up before we got to here, and I do have some time for that. Nathan, did you get your thing running to where you wanted to?
No, unfortunately, now I have a back end issue, but I'm working through it.
Okay, okay, all right. So, and then Anthony, were you able to get to this point when you made that one adjustment to your settings up high
I'm almost there. Can you show me that line again?
on the settings file? Sure.
Yeah, I'm in the settings file now. I just gotta find where that was.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main thing that we did yesterday was,
Allowed hosts.
yeah, absolutely. It's your allowed hosts list.
Allowed host list.
Yep. So when
Is
your
that supposed to
settings.
be, that's supposed to be commented out, right?
Nope. So
Oh, I see. I got it. I found it.
yeah,
There's
you got it.
nothing in. I have to manually put it in.
Yeah, you have to put in your username .pythonanywhere.com as a string, and then it should work. And this was the major change that we made to this default file. The other thing that we did was we moved our secret key out into another file, which is optional, but it's the best practice to keep things more secure and to keep it safe. But this updating your domain name in the allowed host is the only required part.
Username dot pythonanywhere.com. Okay.
Yep. And again, make sure it's in quotation marks, so it's a string.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so as you're working on that, as you're working to get caught up, I'm just going to kind of go through what we're going to be doing next and show a few things that are built in here and that we're going to be messing with. Again, I mentioned already we're gonna do routing of URLs. So our first thing that's in here, we're gonna look at the urls.py file. It's in the same level as our settings.py. And we're just gonna have a look. We're not gonna do any writing in this just yet, but this is the thing that comes standard. So this one comes built into it, and it has this string at the top with a whole bunch of information. There's a good set of docs to go look at. But then it has examples, which are super, super helpful. So when writing function views, which is what we're going to do at first, we're going to write some function-based views. Don't worry about what that means. But it shows you exactly the patterns you're going to need to use. So if you forget some of the syntax along the way on some of these things, it's good to know that this is in here. We're also going to do this setting up an external URL comp file and link this together. That's kind of a choice that we're going to make, but we'll talk about why we would do that here in a minute. But I want to show you that what comes here before we talk about the syntax and how this is built and what this is doing exactly. I want to show that right here, this comes standard with something called admin slash something, right? And then it has this other thing that says admin.sites.urls. So what that means is that if we go to our site here, where we have our base URL that we've set up as our domain, and we add slash admin to it, it should take us to this, and it's going to look nasty. But this is the beginnings of an admin panel. This is something that comes built into Django. We're going to get this set up to where it looks nicer today, and we're going to set up a way to log into this so we can actually use it as an administrator. But as you can see, it comes with, again, a username and password thing and a login button. As you would expect, there's some other navigation things up here at the top. But again, this looks terrible. So the other thing we're going to do besides routing our own homepage is we're going to set up what's called static files. And static files include things like CSS and JavaScript and any other script type things that aren't going to be back end or dynamic. There's something that's going to be on the front end. The browser's going to load. pictures, movies, that kind of thing. But it's also going to be the layouts and the colors for this to make it look pretty and look like a page that you'd actually be able to navigate. So we're going to do those two things as or three things, our major thing. We're going to set up a super user so we can log into this. We're going to run our static files so that we can make this look nice, and we'll use that next week when we do our front end development. We'll have our static files set up, and we'll do the same patterns that we do, and then we'll route a URL of our own, just like this admin route exists for us. We're going to route our own custom homepage route for to do our own homepage. Cool. So let's get started. Anthony, and while I was talking on that, were you able to get yourself caught up?
Well, I went in and I realized you have to hit the save button.
Ah,
So I went back. I've been in the error send download host at admin invalid HTTP header. Says you may need to add, my username Python anywhere to the allowed host, which I did already.
Mhm.
And I hit refresh and I don't know.
Okay.
Are you using single quotes or double quotes there in the string?
it doesn't matter as long as you use it consistently. It makes no difference. So you can't
Yeah.
mix and match.
Yeah, I use single quotes. I hit save, and yeah. So
Here, you want me to have a look? What's what's your username?
it's right there on my screen name. It's those numbers.
Oh, this right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I put it right there in my name. You take a look real fast.
So
Oh, you
let's
got it there quick. Oh, good gracious.
have a look at your settings.py file.
Okay. I think I did what you told me to do,
Yeah, well, that looks good.
but it won't. But I get this. I hit refresh on the actual web page, and I get a whole bunch of error information.
Okay. Another thing, real fast.
Oh, it's working.
It's working.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I was thinking one thing might have been done. I don't know if you saw what I did real fast, but a note to everybody else as well. In any of these files, make sure that whenever you make a change, in addition to saving, let's open this file back up. So you
Hmm.
definitely save, and there'll be a little flag in here that says unsaved changes, but definitely hit the green button to save. But don't forget to hit this little recycle button.
Oh,
Push it to
yeah,
the source, to push it to the server. Because
I
any
didn't do
code,
that.
yeah, so like any code that you make, if it's not pushed to the server, then if you refresh in your browser, the browser is still going to be pulling old code from the server. So,
Oh,
so there's like a series of steps you always got to. That's totally fine, man. That's like one of the things that just it comes with practice. It's a number of steps that you make a change, save it, refresh the server code, refresh the browser.
all right. Well, that's working now. Where's that other part that you just told?
This login part, yeah. So if you just write admin at the end of your
Well, I did that
URL,
already.
Yep.
I'm already there. Yeah.
you're here. Cool. Then you're caught up.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Cool. And then actually here I gotta make sure I go back to me before I start launching off into everything else.
So I've noticed that on my site, the big main directory, instead of just manage pi, I've got a db.sqlite3.
Nice. Yes. So you started doing the documentation for today, which means you're just a couple steps ahead of where we're going to be. We're going to talk about exactly what that is.
Okay.
But that's good. You will need that. That's really just a development database. But let's get everybody there and we'll talk about it. Nathan, were you able to get yours working?
No.
No, still stuck.
Yeah, it's still throwing me an error for some reason.
All right, man. We're gonna try to push on.
Yeah,
Try to get caught up. If you can't, again, I'll stay with you afterwards and I'll make sure we get you there.
no worries.
All right, cool. So back in and again, I got a couple more minutes of some other general stuff. So you got a few more minutes to play with that if you want to kind of just listen to this. I wanted to highlight one other thing before we get going too deep. That's going to be a very useful tool. It's in the documentation, but I'm going to do this before we start doing the actual work. So far we've been doing ls to look at what's in our wherever we are, right? So we got ls, and that's cool. But we're going to use this other command called tree, which is really, really nice because it's going to give us a more layered look, and it can look inside of directories automatically, and it'll help give us a better visualization of our overall project as it gets larger. So before I start using this command, I'm going to start the way we should start every day as just a habit. We're going to activate our virtual environment and move into our working directory. So it's the first two steps in the console. No matter what we're going to do, that's what we're going to start with. So to activate our virtual environment, do source, name of the virtual environment, bin, and activate. I'm using, again, tab complete. So I type letter B, hit tab. It should fill in bin automatically. It's one of the ways I know I'm in the right place. Now I know that my virtual environment is activated because I have the parentheses, the name of my virtual environment inside of it. And then I'm going to CD to my site. So now I'm in my site directory. All right, now we're ready to start working on the project. We've got our virtual environment. We're in the root directory for our project. So before we dive in and make any changes, I want to highlight this tree command. I'm just going to run it by itself with nothing, just the word tree, lowercase. It's already downloaded and built in Python Anywhere. And when I do that, it's going to give us this cool little diagram of everything in this directory and all of its subdirectories. So this dot, I left it as a dot this time to highlight this is a common reference, a common way of referencing the directory. So in our case, it's the working directory. It's the tilde my site directory. That's what dot means. And then these are the links into either files or directories. If there's a directory and has contents, it'll show what's in there. So this shows us what's in our my site directory here. This is the top level my site directory that contains the manage.py and the my site directory. Here's our settings.py. And also have this PyCache stuff. So one of the things I like to do is set filters on this tree command to ignore stuff I know I don't want to see, but then it's still going to be useful for us to show as we grow our project and we add more directories and more files, we can still use this thing and filter out stuff like PyCache that we don't need because we don't need this stuff. So what I'm going to do is show. I zoom stuff from away. I can't see what I'm writing. Okay. All right. So the way we do that is we use some flags. So we'll do a tree command. First, I'm going to do an A flag because that's going to show hidden files. Because I want to see that I have the .env file in the right place. So I'm going to add that I, that dash A, and then space, then dash capital I, and that stands for ignore. And then you're going to pass it some kind of string with double quotation marks for whatever pattern you want it to ignore. And so I know I want to ignore double underscore PyCache, double underscore, because that'll just get all that file, that whole directory and everything in it. Now, if you want to ignore more than one thing, more than one pattern, use this bar for or, and you can put more things. And so since I know we're going to be using this throughout the project today, I know I'm going to ignore things that are in JS. I want to ignore CSS, and I want to ignore IMG. Like
Where's that bar button?
That's above your enter key. You got to hold down shift. It's like the backslash. The one above it is the straight bar.
I don't think I've ever used that one before.
Nice. Nice. All right, so when we do this, it's going to run that same thing, except it's going to ignore that PyCache stuff because we don't need that. And it'll give us a little bit more of the information that we do want to see, even though arguably we could ignore these other files that we're going to ignore. All right, so this is going to come in really handy because today we're going to start with another directory. And I want to take a second to talk about the structure of a Django project to begin with. So we have, so far what we've done is we started a project. We ran the command start project. And these are the directories and files that came standard. It was just these things. When we make an application, it will be in this same directory, the same my site directory. And it will sit alongside this also my site directory. So today we're going to make a to-do application, and it's going to be at the same level as my site. It's going to have its own files inside of it. And so basically this is going to be the top level project level directory. That's why settings is in here, and it has this URLs in it. We're going to do a lot of things bouncing in between these directories, and this is a good way to visualize it. All right, so that's the tree command. We'll use it a couple of times. Now we got it ready to go. All right, so the first thing that we need to do.
Yeah, quick question.
Yes.
When you go to tree I, the capital I for ignore,
you
put the pipe JS.
Yep.
Those are files. Those are file extensions, right?
Yeah. Those will be directory names actually.
Oh.
In this case. So what it's going to do is in a second we're going to pull in a bunch of static files from Django to make the admin panel look nice. And it's going to have a whole bunch of CSS files and JS files and image files that's just going to clutter up our tree if we leave it in there.
Okay.
So
but you could, so those are directories, but they could you have put in file extensions in there as well?
Yeah, 100%. If you want to ignore specific file extensions, you could put like .txt or
Oh,
.csv or whatever you want. So like any pattern that you want it to ignore, it'll ignore.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So to do that thing that we need to do, there's a couple of steps that we got to go through. First of all, if we want to make ourselves a super admin to log into this panel, once we have it looking nice, or even before we have it looking nice, we have to create that username somehow. Now let's just take a step back real quick and think, if we want to make something like username and password, is that something that we want to persist between our sessions when we're working, or is that something that we don't mind disappearing from one session to the next?
We want to keep it.
We want to keep it, right? So we want to store that someplace. So we're going to have to create a place to store that. And one of the ways we do that, we're going to use the built-in, the manage.py. So we do Python 3, manage.py, and we're going to run a command called migrate. So we do Python 3 space manage.py space migrate. And this is a database interaction. And what this is going to do is take a bunch of databases that are predefined by Django for the admin functions that we're talking about. So it's going to have ways for people to sign in, way to store users, a way to store passwords, and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to make those databases for us when I hit enter, hopefully. And so then it gets this really satisfying printout of a whole bunch of stuff, these little OK check marks that says that it worked, and everything's green and not red, so that makes us happy, and we like that. But we scroll just a little bit, and it says operations to perform. Up here it says apply all migrations. And this is a term that we'll use a couple of times as we go. Migrations, basically, we're going to define a database using Python classes, and then we'll go through a step called making migrations, where Django will translate that into something that can be turned into a database table. So these are database tables that have been listed right here. So admin, auth, content types, and sessions are standard database tables that come built in with Django. And each line here is just making those changes, basically defining those tables for us so that we have them and we can use them now. So if we run our tree command, and this, JT, is going to get to your question, because now we should have, anybody that ran that command, that file that JT was talking about, the db.sqlite3. So this is an SQL database. Anybody's not familiar with SQL or SQL, that stands for Structured Query Language. We'll talk briefly about it week after next when we do backend stuff. But this is a really simple, very small development database. So it's not good for production work, but it comes standard with Django so that you can do things like users and passwords and all the database functions that you expect out of a backend framework. So now that we have a database, let's create a super user so that we can log into our admin panel and do some stuff with it. So we're going to run that same pattern a few times of doing Python 3 manage.py again, because it's our app entry point. If we recall, this is going to go through that main name check. And this time we are going to create super user, all one word, all lowercase. And when I hit enter on this, it's going to take me into an interactive little shell thing here. That's going to ask me to enter a username and then a password. So the username is going to be anything we want to. I'm going to choose admin because I just don't want to write my username a whole bunch of times. It's going to give us, it's going to tell us it wants an email address. This doesn't have to be a real email address, but it has to follow the real pattern of an actual email address. You're not going to email anyone with this. Password. So this has some requirements. It can't be super simple. You can't just put like 1, 2, 3, 4 or anything like that. You know, it has to be, I think, 8 characters, mix of numbers and letters, that kind of stuff. But when you start typing in here, if this is your first time doing something like this, you're not going to get any feedback. You know, I'm going to start typing a password. You won't see anything happen, and you won't see anything happen on your screen. It's not broken, so you just have to know that you're pressing the right keys and hope that it worked. So it's really weird at first, but kind of get used to it, right? So I'm going to type in my password. Try not to say it out loud because that's a bad habit I have. I'll also try not to misspell
I
it.
just got a complaint. My password was too short.
Uh-oh. Better pick a better
Must
one.
be at least 8 characters.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask real quick that
Sure.
I understand that this is an admin password, but I also know on the web page we create you have the opportunity to create another password. Is that like a dev password, or what's the relationship between those two?
Nice. That's a good question. They're completely unrelated. So the one that I highlighted before that you could optionally set for your web page on Python Anywhere, that's just blocking basically anyone else going to your URL up here, right? So that's going to block this piece. So no one will be able to access this without getting a password into there. The
Oh,
password that
gotcha.
we're setting now is going to get us into this admin panel that's built in at this specific URL.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm done.
Okay. All right. Cool. So if everybody got to this point, then what we can do is we can actually check that this worked. Now I'm going to go into you know what? I'm just going to go to my web tab. I'm going to refresh the source code on the server side just because, or reload it just because that's what I like to do. It's a step that anytime you make a change when you're writing your code and you're doing your things, you should reload it. I'm not positive that we absolutely had to this time, but I'm going to, and I'm going to refresh my browser, even though nothing's going to look differently. Except this time I should be able to log in with that password and username that I just created. So, try it. Again, assuming I actually remember the password that I made. And there we go. So it logged in. It still looks terrible, but these are some things that we can do once we get in here. So before I step through this and show you kind of the beauty of this admin panel, let's make it look nice. So that's one step that we have to go through to access any of our Django projects is set up a super user and be able to log into the admin panel. So that's one thing that needs to be done. We've done that. This is also, again, remember when we set up our password way back when we set up our password and we couldn't see anything. There's no output or anything like that. There's no option to save it like there is in Google. That's all convenient now, or any of the ways you can save it. It's very possible you could forget this password. So don't panic. If you do, just create another super user the way that we did. Just go through these steps, make another super user and log in, and then you can, be a second super user, reset passwords, and I'll show you all that stuff that's built into it. Right. So
I got a question there.
Sure. What's up?
So that database file,
Mhm.
how is it secured?
It's not. It's very unsecure. That's why it's not fit for any kind of production level anything. It's only development purposes. So you should never use it on anything that you're expected to be handling public traffic for anything.
I see. Okay.
How'd you get to admin? Did you just type in admin at the end of the URL?
Yes. Yep. Just
okay.
/admin up here at the top because we don't have any navigation hooked yet, but that's how we do it for now. All right. So now that we have a super admin and we can log in as site administrators, let's set up our static files so that we can serve those. And this is arguably one annoying part about Django. It's one of the things I will not stand up for Django doing well. It does not handle static files well. So some of these settings may feel like, why do we have to go through all these settings? All I can say is Django is an open source project, and if you really don't like it, you can go contribute to it and make it better. But let's go through those steps now, and we can all feel the pain. To do that, we're going to go into the first place we're going to go is into our settings.py, and we're going to make some changes in there. So I'm going to go back to files, my site, then my site, settings.py. All right, now we're going to do a number of things in our settings.py. The first thing we're going to do is up here at the top near our import statements, we're going to import another package that we're going to use to access information from outside of our application from the operating system. And so we use import, and then OS is the name of the package, short for operating system. It allows us to do a number of things. Like we can get the user that's logged in, we can get all kinds of information. It's a very handy Python package that's very, very often used. So what we're going to do with it is we're going to build some path objects like this one. And I'm going to slide down here and kind of talk about this base dir object as well, because we're going to be using it as two. I'm not going to get wrapped up in this part of the syntax right here because it doesn't really matter what this is doing exactly. But basically, this line of code is setting up our reference core directory. Like this is the root directory that everything we make is going to reference back to. So we're going to take this base dir and do other things with it. Like we're going to tell our app how to find things in relation to this base directory, right? And this is something, again, that comes standard in Django, that when you make your Django project in your project directory, it defaults to that top level. For us, it's my site. This is that base dir. All right, so the first setting that we need to do involves an extension of this thing, this base dir constant. It's all caps. It's technically a variable because there are no constants in Python, but it's for us to remember as humans that it is not expected to change. So I'm going to copy this because we're going to use it later on this page. So I'm just going to copy this base dir. We could rewrite it. Doesn't really matter. But then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm looking for a list called templates. So I'm going to go past our install apps, which we back in a little bit today, past the middleware, past our root URL conf to, for me, is line 58, and a templates list that contains a single dictionary. The dictionary's got key value pairs. The first one is backend with a string. The second one, the key is DIRS, and the value is an empty list. And this is the thing we need to change for now. All right, so we're going to add some things to this empty list. And this is basically what, before I talk about what we're going to put in here, so make sure everybody can find this spot and we're all in the same place. What this is going to be doing is we're going to, when we route our URLs, we have to use some sort of template, a page to point to. And it's going to be, again, a file and directory. But that ultimate file is going to be like an HTML file or the web page we want to point it at, right? And they're going to be called templates. That's what we call them here. So we're telling this project what we're going to call our template files, because each application we make will have its own sets of templates. So we're going to have several files with one name that we're going to use over and over again. This is the chance to name it. So we're going to name it templates, but to add it the way we need to, we're going to start by adding to the list that base dir constant by itself, and then slash, and then as a string, so in quotation marks, the word templates. And as we go through here, again, I'm going to try to mention times where you have a lot of flexibility. This case you do have flexibility. I definitely advise you name it this for this project because we're going to reference it this way moving forward, but this is somewhat arbitrary. You can call this whatever you want. Be mindful, though, when you pluralize things and you make things singular. That's a real easy confusion to make, and I'm sure we're going to have problems with that. But that's the only change we got to make on this piece right now. We just got to add the base dir constant, slash, and then the string templates.
Is there a reason why we're using double quotes instead of single quotes?
I'm doing it here for consistency because this page already came with
Okay.
double quotes, but
But
it wouldn't really matter. No.
Okay.
Like, it wouldn't matter mixing in that sense of, like, if I use single quotes all of a sudden for this one piece right here, it would work just fine. Good question, though, and I'm not super consistent about it, so call that out if you have more questions like that. All right, so we're going to make some more changes a little bit further down. We'll keep scrolling down past some of these other things. There's some
Hold
database
up.
settings. Yep.
Oh, yeah, I had to run to the restroom real quick.
Uh-oh.
I'm up to date with the base underscore DRI templates. Was that
Yep.
stuff I was supposed to do before that?
Nope, I'm glad I was going slow and you made it to the bathroom back. So we're going to scroll down from there
Okay.
to the static URL is what we're looking for right here. Now, this is where it gets kind of stupid and confusing. So definitely ask questions. We're going to go through this. We're going to get it set up the right way. But there may be some redundancy in here and some things that we can't name the same way. Ask your questions. So static URL comes standard with it. And this is what, again, a URL, as we talked about before. Actually, who remembers what URL stands for? Now, I've mentioned it at least once, but it was kind of offhanded. So,
Was it the Universal Registry Language?
oh, no, that sounded
Not
good.
close
though.
at all.
No,
Ah,
No.
Universal relay system. How's that?
Universal is right.
relay.
Hey, we're 1 for 3.
Yeah. No, it's
Line.
resource universe. I'm sorry, uniform resource locator. I always want to say universal too. It's uniform resource locator. So it's the location of the thing that we're trying to find is what a URL is. So uniform resource locator. So this is just saying that our static files can be found at this location, the static slash, right? So that when our web application tries to serve static files, this is what's going to be written up in the URL bar. So that comes standard. We're going to leave that alone. We could change that, but it's fine being static. I've never had a need to change that for any possible reason. There are two other things that we need to set in here. One is called the static root. So all caps, again, these are considered constants. We don't expect them to change. So static underscore root. And what this is going to be is each application, I mentioned, is going to have its own templates. Each application will have its own static files as well. So it can have its own color schemes. It'll have its own like scripts that you run for it that are application specific. And those will all be in the static files. The way that Django is going to serve them when the page is live and active and running is it's going to take all those static files from every application you have, which there may be many applications. We're just going to have one as an example, but you can do this, and you will as projects get bigger. You're going to have more and more applications as they go. It's going to take all of those, and it's going to collect those static things into one file, into one directory. And then when the site is live and running, it only references that one directory to get everything, and it makes everything a little bit faster. So static root is what that directory will be. We are defining that directory that Django is going to compile everything into. That's what static root is. So let's define that now. So we're going to use that OS package that we imported. So we start by doing OS lowercase, and then dot. And we're going to use a couple of things that are built into it. We're going to build a path. So os.path, and we're going to use dot join. So we're going to join some path things together. And we're once again going to use our base dir. So the all caps base underscore dir constant. And we're going to send another thing to send it with. Now this is an optional name that you can set anything you like. I'm going to call it static underscore main with trailing slash for good measure, just because that's the thing that I like to call it, because I know it's the main static directory. But this could be pretty much anything you want it to be. But you don't want it to match this. You don't want it to be static. Like it can't be static itself. It can be some variation of static something, but it can't be the word static. Like this and that should not match.
What about static with 2 T's?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as they're not 100% match, or like capital static or something like that. Because again, computers are stupid. They're not going to infer like, oh, that's almost the same thing. It doesn't know. It has to be exact. As long as it's not exactly this word, you should be good. If you do use the same word here and here, this thing will complain to you. It'll be like, you can't use the same word. So don't do that. All right, so this is our static root, and this is how we are going to collect all of the things into one place so that when it's served, it's a little bit quicker. All right, so the other thing that we need to do is we need to tell Django the name of those files in each application, what directory name we're going to give to our static files in each application. So this is, again, something we could name it kind of whatever we wanted to, but we're going to name it static so that it's very clear what those are in our directories when we're working in them. So that setting, though, is called static files, all one word, underscore dirs. So static files, dirs, short for directories. And this, again, is telling the computer or Django which files are going to be our static directories, like which directories will hold our static files, the name of that directory. So this is going to be stored as a tuple. So remember I talked about not using tuples a lot. This is one of the places we're going to use them. So it's inside parentheses. So I'm going to do an open and closing, so I have them both. We're going to use our OS package again. So os.path.join, just like we did above. And then open and close parentheses. So we got 2 sets of parentheses. We're inside of one set. We got another set for the join. And then similarly, we're our base dir again. And then the name that we want to give all those static directories inside of our projects, inside of our applications. And again, so this is going to be called static so that we know that's what they are. And this and that can be the same. That's totally fine. But this and that cannot be the same. And then the other thing I'm going to do with this tuple is I'm going to put what's called a trailing comma. So the first thing we have in here is this os.path.join, base dir, static, and then I got this comma in here. Now this is just standard. We're not going to add anything else to this. We could, but I mean, we're not going to in this project. But the idea here, this is a real standard practice in Python. It's not going to break anything to leave this out or put this in. But if you look at any of these lists, like here's this auth password validators that we're not going to do anything with, but you see it's a list, and it has dictionaries, and each dictionary is separated by a comma. The last one has a comma. And the idea here is that we can add more things to these lists and not have to remember if there's a comma there or check it. It's just like everyone that writes in Python leaves this trailing comma. It's kind of what's expected. You see it in all things. There's one here. There's one here. It's just how it's done. So when you do any of these lists, tuples, dictionaries, common practice to leave a trailing comma at the end. And that's acceptable in Python syntax. It won't break anything. But so this is the main one that we need to get set. The static files dirs. So we got os.path.join in parentheses base dir comma static. All right. Now that we've done those settings, we're going to save this. I'm not going to reload the server-side code yet. We have one command that we need to do now that we've set these settings up. So like I mentioned about these things, we have this static directory that all of our other static files are going to be collected up into. So we have to go tell Django to do that action manually and say, go collect our static files and put them in here. And it's going to make this directory if we don't have it, because we don't have it, but it'll make it. And this is also going to make all of this stuff. It's going to pull in the static assets for our admin panel as well from wherever they exist. And it'll pull it into our project so that this will have some color schemes, hopefully, if we did all this right.
I have an issue.
All right, what's up?
When I hit save, I got, I guess I didn't import OS somewhere.
Uh-oh. So up the very top,
Yeah,
up the very top, make sure you import OS.
above the, where?
Just somewhere near the top, it doesn't matter. As long as it's before you use it, but the convention is to put all your import statements at the very top.
You have a couple of froms in there too as well. I don't have those either.
Yeah,
Okay.
these should come, well, this top one comes standard, and this one we added, but you don't have to if you didn't do the moving your secret key out, which you didn't do from last time. So
I
you won't
did
have
not.
this one.
So I don't need the environment then?
Nah, you can skip this part. That's fine.
Okay, well, we're good now. Let me,
Yep. You just need this import
Maybe-
OS.
and I don't see the error messages anymore. Okay.
Beautiful. All right. Cool. All right. So then move over to your console, and we're going to run this last command that should pull everything together. And so we're going to do that in the same pattern that we have before, accessing our app through Python 3 space manage.py. And then we're going to do collect static, all one word, all lowercase. And when I hit enter on this, it should say, hey, warning, this directory doesn't exist, which means they're going to make it, which is cool. And then it says 127 static files copied to, and it says where it copied it to. So now, if I clear this up and I run my tree command, there she is. And we have a look. Now we have inside, here's our my site directory, and below that we have our static main, which is what we called it. And now we have this admin directory. And if I didn't filter out all this JS and CSS and all that stuff, it would be full of all those things. It would be full of the JS files, CSS files, all that kind of stuff. All right, so now that we've done that, we've collected our static files. What I'm going to do is reload our source code on the server side, and then go back and refresh our browser. See if it looks any better.
I still got a bunch of JS. It didn't catch that JS directory.
It didn't catch the
Okay.
JS directory?
Something went wrong.
Uh-oh, did something go wrong?
The tree command didn't catch it.
I forgot a huge step. Everyone's going to break. So look, I came back here and was like, oh, it should look pretty. And then it doesn't. And I'm like, oh, it's not working. Why isn't it working? Back on our web tab, we have to tell Python Anywhere that we just did all that stuff with the URLs and the directories, or else it's not going to work. So right down here in static files, for shame, I forgot myself that we have to tell it what we're going to be using here. So we have two things we need to set in here, a URL and a path, right? So the URL is in our settings.py. That's the static URL. So it's going to be like the example in here. It's just going to be /static, static /. I'm going to save that. And then in path, this is going to be our path to our the main static directory that we collected everything up into. So it's going to be home/username, right? So I'm just going to copy this from up here because that's so much faster. I'll copy my working directory to shorthand that stuff. So it's going to be the home / username / my site / static _ main. Save that. All right.
Can you show that again?
Sure. Sure. So your URL setting should be static, like the static URL in your settings.py. And then the directory setting should be /home / username / my site / the static main, or whatever your static root setting was. For me, it was static main.
/ whoa, hold on. Static main. Okay. And then a slash. Okay. Dang, habit. Why does it keep? You know what? You have to hit the check mark. Every time I bounce from one to the other, I have to do it again.
Yeah, the check mark. The check mark. Yeah, as soon as you bounce out of it, you got to click that little blue check mark to save.
Oh, hold on. Let me. My site / static main.
Yeah.
That's wrong. Hold on. My site static main.
All right.
And then check. Okay.
All right. So
And then we'll go here. Static.
you got that working?
Yeah. Static.
All right. So once you get that working, it'll take your site from being that nasty bunch of lines to looking like this. It'll be a lot prettier. It'll have colors and layout, and it'll be much, much better. And I'm going to show you quickly what this gives us the opportunity to do. So we have users, we have groups, as our two things that are default in here. These are both
mine
database
doesn't
tables.
Look like that.
We're going to make
It's
our
working
own.
now, but
Right?
it's not looking like that.
It doesn't look like this?
No,
What does it look like?
it looks like it did earlier,
Uh-oh.
but it doesn't say anything went wrong.
Did you run the collect static and it worked?
Yes.
And did you reload the server-side code?
Yes.
And you have your URL and your directory in there the right way like this?
Yes.
And it still doesn't look pretty? It could also be a browser catching a cached version. You could try holding down Shift when you refresh your browser, and maybe that might be a problem as well.
Oh, boy, I think I just lost it. Oh my gosh. Oh man.
You said hold down Shift when you refresh.
Yeah, and that's like a hard refresh. It makes it grab all the static files over again.
Nope, didn't do anything.
Still didn't work. Okay. All right. If you can't get
I'm
that,
using Firefox, if that makes a difference.
it shouldn't. It shouldn't at this point. No, it shouldn't. You didn't get any error messages.
No.
And you're sure you don't have anything misspelled here? Because if it didn't come through and it still just looks all ugly and janky, my assumption is that there's something in this setting that you didn't spell right, or is mislabeled in some way. Because that's what I did too when I forgot to put this in here. It just didn't come through, but it didn't give me any errors. It just didn't work.
Let's go back to web. Static main.
All right. So if
Maybe
that's still hung up for folks, I'm gonna press through just like talking about these things. And if that still doesn't work, then we could circle back and look into why specifically for you it's jammed up. But I'm gonna go through kind of like what is in here and how this works and what's available to us while you're still sorting those things out. And if you're still jammed up, we can definitely set aside some time. So in this admin panel, we've got our users and our groups. These are tables in our database. We're going to be making our own when we make our own application. This right here, where it says authentication and authorization, this is an application. So when we make our app and we come back in here, we'll have another section for our app and our database tables underneath it. And we'll be able to interact with them like this. So I open up the users. Here's that admin user that I made. I can come in here, do more stuff to it. I can give a first name, last name, adjust the email address, set permissions. I can create user groups and give them specific permissions to specific things, check when they logged in, reset the password, all that stuff directly here. And this is, again, was built into Django. So we don't have to write any of the code to do any of this stuff. This is just built in right away. And this gives us all the basic interactions that we are going to be writing into the front end of our application, the creating, reading, updating, deleting things, right? So we can read the users. There's a little add button to create them. We're looking at one where we can update it right now. So this is updating. And there's a little delete button down here where we can delete them. So this gives us all that stuff on a really basic level. Now, this isn't something you're going to give to end users. This is something that's just, again, for developers, maybe systems administrators, site administrators, something like that. And what we're going to do as we develop is build the database tables that are going to be visible here and accessible here, and then a user interface on the front end for people to like make things without having to come here. So let's move to the next piece, which is updating. If we go back to our view site, there's a little button up here that says view site. This is the default take us back to our root domain. And if we click on this, it's still just our generic Django page. So let's move into setting this up to be our custom home page. Now to do that, we are going to go back to our console and we're going to start our application because there's some things in the application, specifically a views. It's called views. We'll spend a lot of time in there now. I'm not going to define it for us, but it's something that we don't have at our project level. So I'm going to run the tree real quick. We have our settings. We have our URLs. We don't have a views.py. Views is what we need to start handling our HTTP interactions and route our URLs. So those come in what's called an application. So let's start an application. So I'm in my top level root directory. I'm going to do Python 3, manage.py, and start app. All one word, all lowercase. And then I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say to do. Again, you could call this anything you really want to. For this project, I recommend you call it this because we're going to be referencing that a lot. If you call it something else, it's just going to make debugging trickier. So if you don't like to do as the name of your app, tough. No, I'm joking. You can really call it whatever you want to. Just remember whatever you call it. And keep in mind that when I say to do, if you call it something else, it's called something else for you. All right, so now when I did that again, it'll give me no feedback that it did anything. But if we do our tree command again, we can see we have a whole new directory. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so now I can see everything. So I have a whole new directory called to do. And it has, likewise, this init.py, so it's a module. We're not going to talk a lot about that, but these are Python standard things. It's how all these directories and files work together as one application. We have an admin.py, which we won't do a ton with, but we'll kind of look at for a second. Similar with apps. Migrations, I mentioned before, this is going to list each time you make database tables and migrate those database tables into your database. We haven't done any yet, but there will be a literal list of those in here that you can look at and do things with, and we'll do some more of that week after next. Models is where we actually define our databases. Again, we'll do that week after next. Tests is something that I personally neglect terribly, but this is a place where you can write your tests, and you should write your tests, and I will hypocritically tell you to do that. But views.py is where we're going to be going to today, right now, and a lot of times is where we start when we start routing URLs, and that's what we're going to go through today is routing our homepage. The place we need to start is in views.py. So the first thing we do is write a view. So now that we have that, we started our app, and we have a look at this. We need to go and do one more quick setting before we go into the views in our settings.py. Now we've created a new application. We have to tell our project that this app should be included in our project overall, right? So let's go back to our settings.py and do that change real quick. So I'm going to go back to my files, my site.
What's the difference between creating and starting something?
Oh, and those commands where it says create and start. Man, that's a really good question. I honestly don't know. I'm assuming that when they did the project, they had reasons to, but it could just be the group of people. Again, this is an open source project. Django's open source. So it could be the people that made the create super user and stuff like that. It made more sense to them that they use create, and then for projects, it made more sense to say start. So I don't know. I don't know any deeper than that. That's what you're talking about, right? Between the create and start that we've used so far?
Right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. It's a good question. I think, I never even thought about it. Remember, you could easily use create for those other ones. All right, so what we're looking at here, you got me kind of sidetracked. That's a good question. We're going to look at here is our installed apps list. And we need to add our app to this installed apps list. So I guess actually, before we do that, I mentioned this apps.py file. And let's just have a look in there without opening it. I'm going to cat that. So cat to do apps.py, and it's just going to concatenate, so it's going to print it out to my screen. I can zoom back in, so it's a little bit bigger. All right, so there's not a lot in this file, which is totally fine. We don't need there to be a lot in here. We're not going to do anything in it. But you see the top where it says, from Django.apps import app config. So that's a class somewhere that does some things. And then here's a custom class, and you'll notice it has our app name to do, and then config is the name of the app. And then it has a couple of things in here. It's got a name and a default auto field. We don't need to really worry about what those things are doing. But we're going to take this name, this to-do config, and we have to add that into our settings.py. All right, so after this static files, you see those things when we ran our migrate, it had admin auth content types. That's what these things are here. They're all apps. So after this trailing comma here, we're going to add a new entry into this list. So we're going to add another string, just like the strings above it, except ours is going to be the name of our app, so to-do, and then dot, and then the file that we're going to get this from, so the apps file, right? So do to-do.apps dot, and then we're just going to do to-do config, so the name of this class. That's our configuration class. So what this is doing is telling our project, and we're going to close off the trailing comma, even though, again, it's not required. It's kind of best practice to do it. So as you add more apps, you don't have to remember to put that in there. But each app you add, you have to put in this list. All right, so that's going to allow us to treat this directory as part of the project, and it'll find all the things that we make the way that we want it to. So let's go into our views and make our first view and make our first custom page. So I'm going to go to the to-do directory, go my site to-do, and then views.py. Open this up, and it's going to come with a couple of lines of stuff that's built in. The first one is import, where it imports a render package from Django.shortcut. So we're going to use that shortly. And basically what this is doing is it's going to render to the screen a file that we give it, a template that we give it. So the template setting that we set before, we're going to start using that now as we start referring to templates in different places. Right. So when it says right here is a thing, create your views here, you can take out that comment right below it, doesn't matter. But we're going to use functional views. You can either do views as classes or as functions. We're going to start with functions, and then we'll do classes at the end of the class. We'll refactor it. Do a function-based view. We do functions, just like any Python function. Here, I can zoom in a little bit. So DEF, to get started, we're going to define our homepage function. The internet standard is to call this index. You'll see it all over the place. I'm not sure where they came up with that term, but it is typically what is referred to as the root page of whatever it is you're doing. Each app might have its own index. This is going to be our overall project index, but we're just going to call it index. All right, so each of these is going to take in, let's picture our HTTP process. It's going to take in a request, which is being sent from a browser, from a user, right? And that request is going to have all kinds of information about what kind of browser it is, the time it was sent, what page, what URL they want, all that kind of stuff. All of our functional views are going to take in a request as one of its arguments, right? So that's the only thing that's going to take in. It's just going to take in a request. And then we're going to have to return to the user some sort of page, something, based on that request. So they're going to send us a URL in the request, and we want to return to them a page that is rendered. So we use that render package. So we do return, render. We're going to include the request because we're going to take some information out of that request, namely the URL for sure, but then some other things that are in there that we might want to use. And then we're going to pass it as a string, the name of the template we're going to render. So in our case, it's going to be index.html, stands for hypertext markup language. We'll be talking about next week, but we're going to write our templates in HTML. We're doing some real basic HTML right now, just so we have something to look at. And we don't have this file yet, but we're going to reference it. And this pattern of us starting in views and writing a view, this right here, this function is a fully formed, exceptionally simple, but fully formed view. We're going to write a view. And now we're going to need to go map a URL. And then we're going to have to make or do something with a template. Those 3 steps are the major 3 steps that we're going to do over and over and over again. The only other thing we're going to do on top of that is add some navigation, but we don't have navigation. We're going to skip that step today for simplicity and time's sake. So this right now is all we need to do in our views.py. So I'm going to save this. That little warning goes away because now we're using the render package. The next thing we need to do is we're going to go route our URLs. So a couple ways that we could get this done. We could, if you recall, go up to our My Site directory, our inner My Site directory, and go to urls.py. And we could just add everything in this. We could just put all our URL patterns in one spot. But you'll see as we write our functions, each of our create, read, update, and delete functions is going to be its own URL pattern. And that gets really cumbersome to do in one thing as you have more applications. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow this right here. It says including another URL conf. We're going to follow that pattern and set this up so that we have our own URL page inside of our to-do list application. So we're going to set this up to run those, and then we'll go make that URL page. So let's do that. So this tells us exactly what we need to do right here. So it says 1, import the include function from Django.urls, import include. So we already have Django.urls when we import path right here. So we just have to put include in here. I put it before it. Doesn't matter. You put it after it, but separated by comma. You can import multiple packages like this. So I just put include, comma, then path. It's alphabetical order, I guess. I don't know why I like doing it that way. And then we're going to add, I'm just going to copy this part up here from the example because we're doing the same thing. I'm just going to adjust this to my own evil purposes. So I'm going to adjust this path, this path where it says blog and then include blog URLs. Copy that whole thing. And down here in the URL patterns list, I'm going to add it above my admin. You can put it after the admin. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to take out all the things that say blog because that's not what we want it to be. So I'm going to take out this first one, leave it as an empty string, and change this blog to to-do because that's the name of our app is to-do. So it's to-do URLs needs to be included. All right. Now, what's that?
Is that too many parentheses with the one on the end there?
This one right here?
Yeah.
No, because include has parentheses and path has parentheses.
Okay.
So there's 2 sets of parentheses. Good call.
All right.
All right. Okay. So then what this is going to do is that each app is going to keep a large project a lot cleaner. The size of our project, maybe not necessary, but seriously, this is like the best way to go from the beginning, just to, as you make this bigger, even if you want to add user login or 1 or 2 other things, this is going to be a pattern you're going to want to follow. So now we're going to include our to-do URL. So we need to make a URL file in our to-do directory. So let's go back there and do that. We're going to do a lot of bounce around between directories. Just, prepare yourself for that. So now we're in to-do. And we need a urls.py file in here, like the one that we had.
Sorry, Jeff, I'm slow on the mute button. That
Yeah.
URL patterns, there was a bracket open.
Sure.
And there is a bracket closed below. I didn't see that. On line 23. Okay.
Yes.
I was just trying to figure out what was going on there. All right. Thanks.
Sure.
I'm getting a syntax error on line 20 though.
Uh-oh. What you got going on?
I don't know. When I tried to save it, it's got a little red X on it.
It should tell you what you missed.
It says syntax error.
Uh-oh. Check your spacing. If you copy and paste, make sure you actually have just 1 indentation in and no more than that.
Oh. Enter.
You got it?
Yes, I think.
All right. Cool. All right, so we're going to slide over to to-do directory, and we're going to make a urls.py file here. That's going to be just this project's URLs. Because now we've hooked it up to the project level. I'm sorry, this application's URLs. We've hooked it up to the project level, and now we're just going to make a urls.py file, and we will go there. All right, now we are in our mysite/do/urls.py file, the first thing we need to do is import a couple of things. So from Django.urls, we need to import path, just like we did at the top level URLs. We're going to use that same path thing and build a path the way that we did up there and follow that same pattern that we were following in the project level.
Could you go back real quick? I lost the window when you created the file. And I didn't
Okay.
see what you did. Yeah.
We just have to make a file in the my site to do urls.py. And then I've written just this one line of code in it.
To do. Okay, my site.
URLs.
Where am I? Okay.
Oh my God,
URL.
/my site twice.
So
My
you're in the
site.
wrong. Yeah, you're in the wrong spot. Then you need to be my site /to do.
So you made the URL file?
Yep.
You made.
Yes.
I don't
up.
see where I can make a new file. Oh,
In Python anywhere in that files part, there's a spot just to make.
I see. Hit the new file. URLs.
Yep, you just do urls.py and then hit new file and it'll take you straight into the
Okay.
code editor.
All right, I'm there.
Cool. All right, then you just got to add this top line. It says from Django.url. I almost made a mistake there. .urls. Import path. See?
Okay.
Plurals, man. Plurals and singulars. Mess you up every time. All right, so, and then the other thing that we need to import is our views from our own to-do directory. So we're in the to-do directory, right? So remember I mentioned when we did the tree command that dot at the top is the directory we are in. That's how we reference it here too. So we say from dot, so from period, which means from the to-do directory, we're going to import views. And that's just going to import all of our views. And then we can do things with those views. And what we're going to do with those views is add them to our URL patterns list, which is just the same list that was up there at the top level. So if we think through our sequential control structure, this is going to make a URL patterns in our to-do thing, and that is going to be routed into and included in the project level when it reads that site. So it's going to read this as an object all together when it goes up in there in that top part. All right, so now we need to write our first path to a URL, route our first URL. So now we have this framework all built out. What we're going to do every time we write our operations, this case, writing our homepage, we write our view, then we're going to come in here and we're going to route a URL. So we're going to write a path. All right, so we're going to use that path thing. All right, so we say path, and then open parentheses, and then we have to pick what we want that path to be. So this is our homepage. So we want it just to be the root directory. So just an open string, an empty string is fine. And then comma, and then we need to tell it which view we want to use to build this path. So we're going to say views dot, and then the name of the view that we gave it. So in our case, index, because it's our homepage that we're making. And then the last argument that we're going to send to this is a keyword argument called name. And we'll set it to something. And in our case, we'll set it to the string index. Close this off and put a trailing comma. And this name is how we're going to reference it moving forward, right? And we're keeping it consistent so we know that it's called index as we move on. So when we reference, this is going to be used later when we set up links and things like that. This is how we're going to reference this specific path and this pattern. All right, so that's it for URLs. We have routed our URLs. We routed it through the top level project, and we routed our application level index URL. The last thing that we need to do for this to make it work is we need to create some sort of template, right? So we need to create this, if we recall. I'm going to just real fast go back to views. We told it that we're going to have an index.html. We don't have that yet, so we got to make that. And we told this thing in our settings that our templates directory is the name that we're going to be using to store our templates. But we don't have a templates directory. Here we got my site static and all that stuff. We don't have one. So we need to make the directory. We need to make that file. I'm going to go back in here to my console to do that because I like doing it here. It's just faster for me. What I'm going to do is I'm in my top level directory and I'm going to make a directory. So mkdir is a command that we use kind of day one, right? We're going to make a directory called templates, right? And then I'm going to use 2 ampersands. I'm not going to hit enter yet. I'm going to use and this is going to run 2 commands sequentially. So I'm going to make a directory, and then in that directory, I'm just going to go ahead and make my index that I want to use later. So I'm going to use touch to make something, touch to make this empty file. I'm not going to put anything in it right away. And I'll give it the full templates / index.html, and that wrapped around to a new page, a new line on my thing. I didn't hit enter. That's just how it works. I got my screen zoomed in. So the whole command is mkdir space templates space ampersand space touch space templates / index.html, and that should create the directory and the file inside of it. If I check out my tree command and slide up, now you'll see that we have a templates directory with an index.html in it, as we would expect. So I'm gonna go back to my site. If I refresh this, it should pop up. There's our templates. I'm gonna go into that index.html, and let's put some stuff in here. Let's put some basic HTML in here. So we're not gonna go crazy with the HTML, but we're gonna set up a real basic thing to look at, so that we got something. So this is the goal for today, is to replace this site with something. So this is the something that we're going to replace it with. So in HTML, which stands for hypertext markup language, it is not a programming language. It is, again, markup, which just means basically the layout of the page and how things work on the page. So the way it works is with these brackets, and everything is in brackets like these, and they are called tags. Like this would be, say, an H1 tag. This is an opening tag, and then something with a slash in the brackets and the same name afterwards. This is a closing tag, and the stuff in between is what's printed out on the screen. So this is generally what HTML looks like with these tags and these brackets. Indentation and spacing from the side does not matter in HTML. That's only for humans to read. The computer is going to put this all up into one line and read it really fast. So it's not like Python that'll break in that sense. So don't worry about those things. But let's put in some very basic pieces of HTML that we'll mess around with next week when we do our front-end development more. But again, so we have something to look at, right? So the first tag that we're going to use is expected in newer versions of HTML, telling it what kind of document this is. And this is just the word doc type after an exclamation point, all caps, then HTML, lowercase. This is a convention. I'm not going to try to explain why we do this. Just do this. Just add it to it, and we'll all feel better. Now, something with a new modern version of HTML, HTML5. This is the standard to tell browsers that's what to expect. All right. So the next thing in HTML code that you're going to find is the HTML tag itself. When I create this tag, it's going to close it off for me automatically. When I put the closing bracket, it put this closing tag in here for me. And this is the first time we're delineating our space, right? So we're setting this space up as all of the things that are going to be on our web page from top to bottom, from this very top tab up here to everything that's on this page, as you can see, is going to be within this HTML tag.
What's the upside down or the exclamation point before doc type? Is that standard?
So this is a bang operator, and this is basically just telling it what kind of document this is going to be. This is something we could put at the top. I skipped it when we talked about Python. You could put it at the top of your Python files and any files. I'm not going to get real deep into why we do that, honestly. Mostly because I don't understand it. I know it's the standard of HTML, and it is something that's included. It is, again, for the computer when it's reading it to kind of better understand what file to expect. So it's not a hard requirement, but it's a best practice. I guess if that's the best answer to the question I can give to you. Does that help?
All right. Yeah, I guess.
Is it acceptable? All right. So inside of our HTML tag, we're going to set up some basic structure for things that are always in a web page. One of the first elements that's usually there is called the head element. And this is where you're going to have things that aren't necessarily visible on the page. Sometimes we're going to put a lot of things in here later. We're going to have CSS in here. We're going to have our JavaScript coming in through here maybe. But one thing that we do set in here is the title. Now the title tag, so inside of our head element, is going to be anything that you see up here on this top tag. Right here, it says our index.html and all that stuff, and it says the install works successfully. That's the title. So for me, I'm just going to put my site. You can put any title you want to, but that's what's going to appear at the top of your page. And then under the head element, there is typically a body element, which, you know, makes sense anatomically. And it's also the main portion of your page, right? So all this stuff down here below this address bar is basically the body. This is all in the body of our page. So all this stuff here. For us, since we're just getting started, I'm just going to put in that H1 tag that I was using before. So H stands for heading, and 1 is the largest. You can go H1, H2, H3, and make them smaller all the way down. This is just going to be something. You can say this is the index. You can say homepage. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to put some sort of information here so we have something to put out on our page. We're not going to go any further with the HTML right now. This is plenty for now. We have a document that we've defined that has a head element with our title and a body with something in it so we have something to see. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to reload the server side. And we've done all these changes, made all these new directories and files and all this stuff. So if we hooked everything up right, if we made our view right, mapped our URL right, and we made this template correctly, if we go back here and refresh this browser, it should change into our custom, this is the index HTML that we wrote. And there that is.
I got a question.
Yes.
On that file we just did, the index.html file,
Yes.
you hit the server refresh button there?
Yep.
So that don't just refresh that file, that refreshes the whole everything.
Yeah. So any of the changes that we made and any of the other files you saved is going to push all the latest up to the server.
I got something went wrong.
Uh-oh. What went wrong for you?
Ooh.
I don't know yet. Let's check.
I know mine's something to do with this. For some reason, URLs is not under to do. It's under another my site.
Uh-oh.
My to do folder doesn't have urls.py, but there's another my site folder that has it.
Uh-oh. Okay.
There's a my site under my site too. So that's,
You've got extra my site directories.
yeah.
That's definitely an issue.
Yeah.
You want your directory structure. Try to get it all on the screen here. To generally look like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we should have the top level my site up here. It's got your manage.py and then one inner my site directory that just has the settings and a urls.py. And then to do with the other urls.py.
Yeah. For some reason, I don't know. For some reason, I've got an offset here too, maybe. Sure. Admin, my site. Yeah. Damn. Yeah, it just goes templates to do on the same level.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you know, I'm not filtering out all that other stuff too, but yeah, I have a my site. I have DB SQLite manage.py and my site
Yeah.
at that level.
Mhm.
And static main, and then I'm not filtering out all the CSS IMG stuff.
Okay.
Then I go templates,
Yeah.
index, then I go to do init high cache.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, it is? Okay, I'm not filtering it. And then
Yeah, it's not
admin
filtering.
py,
Yep.
migrations, init py,
Yep.
models,
Yep.
and tests and views. I skip URLs.
You gotta have URLs in there. Yeah. You didn't make that URLs in there.
Can I just make it into this little tree and make it?
Yeah, totally. You totally can. You can just do v to do urls.py. And if you don't, it'll make it.
Really?
Yep.
V?
Yep, V. And this, but this is going to be the text editor in the thing. If you're comfortable doing it in V, that's a way you can do it. That'll make it, and you can come in here and edit it.
I'm not doing it at my site prompt, my Python.
No, and like that's if you want to do it this way, you can just go in there and make it in the GUI as well. If you just go to do.
Oh, well, if you go up, yeah. So that level right there, I have my site,
Mhm.
and then I have another my site.
Yeah,
And
yeah, there should be. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got everything. Just for some reason, I don't have the URLs in the to do.
Yeah, you might have skipped this step. So just go into this one, and then in here where it says files and it says enter name of a new file. If you
Yeah.
just do urls.py, it'll make it for you, and it'll take you straight into the editor,
Oh, okay.
and then you can add this stuff into it, which I can keep open for a minute. And so the last thing I wanted to do, I'm gonna keep this open for you, Greg. If you want to
Thank
try
you.
to
Yeah,
jot
I'm
this
doing-
stuff down real quick.
I'm a
The
quick
last thing I
typer.
wanted to do, because this is getting our custom site up, is definitely the hard checkpoint I wanted to get to. There are two other things that I wanted to do, but there's plenty of time between now and next time for you all to take the documentation and do it yourselves if we don't get through it today. The one thing I do want to do, if we can, is to hook up Django's template language. It's a little bit of the connecting the front end and back end stuff, and it's something we're definitely going to be doing as we move forward. So we could do that now if we got time, or we can keep making sure that everybody's caught up to this point. How are we feeling? You want to press on and try to do the template language, or we have enough people stuck that we want to try to debug here?
Maybe we should do a roll call and see if everybody's up to date or not up to date.
That's what I'm saying. Who's
I've
caught up?
I'm
Yeah, I'm
not finding a lot of the files for why something went wrong.
Okay, so you're stuck. How about you, Josh Rice? You got it working?
I'm caught up.
You caught up?
I'm good.
You're good, Anthony? How about you, Greg? You still stuck? Are you getting this URLs down?
This is the index. Yeah.
Nice. You got it?
I think that worked. Thank you.
Excellent.
That bottom bracket was in the wrong place. Is that what messed it up? I don't know.
That could be. It could be the stupidest little thing. Daniel, Ariel, Nathan, how y'all doing?
Yeah, I'm caught up.
Good.
Nice.
I went back to day 3, so I'll
Okay.
be back
All right.
watching videos from day 3. I still can't get it working.
Okay. And again, you and me, we can sit after this, man. I can get you caught up here to make sure that we're whatever's hanging you up, we can get over it. All right. So if it sounds like most people are caught up, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through this last little bit of setting up the template language, which is the standard way to do things, and it's definitely how we're gonna use the project moving forward. And it's really not that tricky, so it shouldn't take us all that long. All right. So setting up the template language is going to require us to basically go back into our index.html. So I'm down in templates. So my site templates, index.html. And what we're going to do is take all the stuff that is going to be on every page, no matter what page we make, however many pages we make. We're probably all going to have the same like HTML stuff, head stuff, and body stuff. We're going to put all those things into one place so that we don't have to rewrite it a bunch of times, and then make a way to dynamically change this content, the content that's in the body that will be different from page to page, right? So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to take all the stuff that's in the index right now, and I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to go back to my templates directory. I'm going to make another file right alongside our index.html called base.html. This, again, doesn't have to be called base. This is a convention. Typically, that's what it's called, but you don't have to call it that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste all that stuff from the index in here. And then we're going to use basically all this except our little H1 thing that says this is the index. I'm going to erase that because we don't need that. So these are all the pieces that are going to be the same throughout every single page we're going to write. And this part where I'm on my line 9 right now is going to be the part that's going to change a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to add Django's template tags in here to tell it that this block of code is going to have some other content in it. And those are written with curly brackets and a % sign, both opening and closing. So curly brackets, % sign, curly brackets. I'm going to close those off just so I don't forget, because I always forget to put those things on there. And then we're going to put in what's called a block tag. And that's block. That's where block is a reserved word. It's expected. It's what this thing is called. It's called a block. The next word is any variable name you want to give it. I'm going to call it content to remind us that this is the content of our page, but you could call that anything. It does not matter. And these blocks expect an end block tag, also with our percentage signs and curly brackets. And that's it. That's all that needs to be done in our base.html. We just need to tell it where we want our content to be injected. We don't need space in between these things or nothing. We just have to put this in here in the location that we want our content to go. And I'm going to hit save.
I got a question.
Yes.
I know block is a reserved word. Content is whatever we want. I made content all capital. Is that okay?
Yeah, that should be fine. I don't think that'll break anything.
And in block is also a reserved word?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so the other thing we need to do is now make some changes to our index to reference back to this and connect the two, because this is going to be, again, our base that all of our other templates are going to extend. We're going to extend this base in our other templates. So I'm going to go back to the index.html. And I'm going to take out all the stuff that we don't need here, which is like most of it. Honestly, I'm just going to have that H1 tag kind of by itself. Whoop. Got a little overzealous there. All right, so here's a little H1 tag chilling. Like I said, these indentations don't matter, but I'm going to move it over for human readability because it's kind of silly to have a thing indented to the center of the page. All right, now what we need to do is to tell this file to extend our base. And we do that with the Django template tag, so the curly brackets, percentage sign, and I'm going to close it. And then in between those tags, we use the word extends. And then we just tell it as a string what we want to extend. So we do base.html. This is the top line of our template, and we're going to use this every time we make a new template. We're going to extend our base template. That way it'll have uniformity over every page we do, and all the elements that we have in our base will be on every single page exactly the same way. So it'll be really good for navigation and footers and all that kind of stuff. Now, we have to tell it what content we want to include using that same block content that we did before. So we do our block element at the top, call it content, because that's the name we used. So now it has to match whatever name we used before. And then underneath this H1, we're going to do our end block. And that's it. We're going to save that. So now we have separated out all of the parts that are going to be reused throughout the entire site are going to be in our base, and then the index that's actually referenced, this template is the one that we reference in our reviews, has just the information that's relevant to that thing. So I didn't reload. I'm going to reload the stuff on the server side. We'll go have a look. Since we refactored, it shouldn't have changed anything. So we can go back here, and it works. It does still work, but we can maybe prove that worked a little bit by changing something in the index and just show that it is, in fact, piping this stuff together. I'll just put this is still the index, and I'll reload it. This is a quick demonstration to show that we were able to hook up our template language. All right, so that is how we do Django's template language. We come up with a base template, and then we extend that using blocks. Questions?
I got something went wrong.
Uh-oh. What went wrong?
I don't know.
Uh-oh. Check your check your logs. See if you can get a hint. I'm guessing with all the new opportunities to make a spelling error or mistake that one of those brackets might be incorrectly written.
I'll just watch the video again and go back.
Okay. I was gonna say we're at the end of class now, so I can wrap up the recording and sit with anybody that's stuck, and we can go through one-on-one debugging if you like and get you caught up to the spot. Who was able to get here to this?
Oh, I
point?
got it. I think there's a delay between hitting the refresh server,
Uh-huh.
and then there's a delay. So when I hit it, I hit refresh again, then it works.
Nice. Okay, so you got it working.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Daniel, you got it working?
Still the index.
Nice. Nice. Anybody else?
Something too. I don't know what.
Uh-oh. Okay. What do your logs
Says-
say?
Hold on. How do you get to that again?
Get to your logs?
Yeah.
Yeah, so on your web tab, if you scroll partway down, section called log files, and then the one that's called error log is going to be the middle of the three.
Okay.
That's going to be the one you want to look at.
And scroll all the way down.
Yeah, most recent call is going to be all the way at the bottom.
My side.
Some file called resolvers.py. It says
Interesting.
line 711.
Wow.
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, do you want me to pop yours open here and have a look? Do you mind sharing with the class?
Okay.
Hey, nice. You have. I'm guessing this is you, Ariel Taylor. That's your username.
Yeah.
Way to use something we can recognize. I appreciate that. All right. So I'm gonna open up your error logs. I'm gonna actually zoom out a little bit. This is too close for me. Okay. Error logs, and then we'll scroll down. Let's see what we got. So, include syntax error. Okay. Yeah, so I'm guessing what happened here. Right here was where I'm looking, where it says syntax error, invalid syntax. Perhaps you forgot a comma. I'm guessing in your pattern URL patterns list, there's not a comma.
In where?
In your URLs.py, probably at the project level. Let's see. Go here. Let's have a look. File.
I'm getting a template does not exist. thing.
So either you named the template the wrong thing when you made the file, or you didn't reference it the same way, or didn't reference it the right way. Yeah, Ariel, right here. In your URLs, so you have my site URLs.py. When you added the include, you forgot the comma right here
Okay.
on line 21. So if you add that comma, save it, and reload your code on the server side, it'll solve that error at least. All right. Did that work for you, Ariel?
1 second.
Sure. All right. So anybody that wants to hang out and keep debugging, absolutely welcome to do that. We're at time. Anybody else have any general questions before we wrap up for the day? Yeah. And again, Josh Rice, were you able to finish?
No,
Yeah.
I was.
Okay. JT,
I'm
you're stuck.
still figuring out.
Okay. Greg, you got it working?
Was in
Yeah, it came out great. Yeah, thanks.
Nice. Sorry, Josh Rice, what were you saying?
Question for like after class finishes up, or after all the 6 weeks, how long are the videos going to be available for?
Oh yeah, man, good question. So the Zoom links will be good basically until I start another class and I have to make space for it. So probably good 3-4 weeks afterwards. But then I'll just post them up on YouTube and they'll be available whenever.
Okay. And it's the Higher Labs YouTube page, I'm assuming?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sweet.
Yeah.
I just download everything every week.
What's that?
I download everything every week.
Oh, nice. Nice. It's definitely the way to do it.
I think my site's working again now.
Excellent. It was just that one comma.
I think so.
It's infuriating how many hours you're going to spend finding exactly that. There'll be like one little comma that you missed. Break the whole thing. All right, cool. So I'm going to stop the recording there. And then again, anybody that wants to debug with me live, we could definitely stay on and do that. And everybody
Yeah.
else, have a great Thanksgiving if you celebrate. And we'll see you next week. We got a full week between now and our next class.
Same to you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
good
you.
one. Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.